Hi friends, hope you are having a good day. I'm Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to talk about the B1 B2 visitor visa. And this is the visa you are going to need if you are coming to the US in a conference, essentially for a short-term visit, or if you are coming to the US to visit some relatives, friends, or as a tourist. So typically this visa goes together. You are issued the B1/B2 visa, but each time you come into the US, the officer will stamp a different code depending on why you have come. So he's going to ask you questions like, why are you coming to the US? And if you mention things like you're coming for conference or business or something like that, he will stamp B1 and he will give you the date till which you can stay. And in case you mention you are going to visit your relatives, maybe you are going to visit your children, you are going to visit your parents, you are going to your nephew's wedding or something like that, then they are going to stamp B2 on this visa. Now the first thing you have to do to apply for this visa is fill the DS-160 form on the web page, and once you have filled this form, you have to schedule an appointment at the nearest consulate or embassy as the case may be, and then you have to go for the interview. Now essentially the visitor visa is issued for a period of 6 months or less. That essentially depends on the consular officer, what he thinks or she thinks. And as I mentioned before, the B1 is issued for conferences or business, the B2 is for personal travel, tourism, and so on. So generally you get the B1 B2 visa in one shot. So now the first issue the consular officer is going to ask you is the purpose of travel, and here you have to be very clear in your purpose of travel. So if you are coming to a conference, you need to be specific about the conference you are coming for. You need to mention the technical area of the conference, you need to mention the location, details about the hotel where you are going to stay, the air tickets, and some of these things. Now sometimes this information is also required to be put into the system when you apply for the visa. So in that case you would already have put some of this stuff in. Now if you are going for tourism, you need to specify an outline of the places you are going to visit. Maybe you are going to visit Disneyland in Florida, maybe you want to see the Niagara Falls in New York City, so you need to specify some of the details here. So now let us look at the main issue which causes the B1 B2 visa to be given or to be denied, and that is essentially the fact that you have to prove home ties. So essentially you have to prove that you have sufficient ties to your home country, that you will do your work in the United States and you will go back to your home country. So essentially one of the things the consular people do is they presume that it is your intent to stay in US, and so you have to prove that you do not intend to do that. So the main issue is not about why you are coming to US, but about why you are going to go back. And here all the things which can prove your case of being a temporary visitor are important. For example, if you have a job back in your home country, if it's a permanent job, if it's a good job, if you have a home there, you are a regular filer of taxes for many years, most of your relatives are there, and so on. Now some people think that if they have relatives in the US, they will not get the B1 B2 visa. That's not true at all. In fact, most people have relatives in the US and they have no problem getting the B1 B2 visa, because in most cases they are of course going to go back to their home country. Now sometimes they will ask you a lot of personal questions, and some people mind this, but this is something which the consular officer has to do because they do not really know you as a person. So they may ask you questions like, what do your parents do, or what do you do in your job, precisely how much do you make, how are you paying for this visit, and so on. So you need to have information here. Now if you have been a regular tax filer in your country, that's certainly a good point, because they may ask you to give some information as far as your income or salary is concerned. So this is very often useful. Now, one thing which helps is that you have traveled internationally, but this is not necessary for most people. They may not have traveled somewhere before, but you have been visiting some other countries and you keep coming back to your home country. Then this means you are a regular tourist or traveler or a conference junkie, and then people do not have a problem that you may be coming to US and also going back. Now, this whole issue about whether you are a temporary visitor or a person who is seeking to somehow come into the US and then disappear into the ecosystem is very important decision which the consular officer has to make. This is something known as the 2114B in the law, and therefore they will be making this decision very carefully. Now, there is one more issue which happens, and this is typically to people who are applying for the B1 or the conference visa, and that's known as the 221G case. So sometime you are issued a slip. This is sometime a pink slip, a white slip, or so on. There is a lot of literature on which slip means what, but essentially what has happened is the officer has not found the documentation and the information you have provided to be sufficient to issue the visa at this stage, and more processing is required before they can make a decision. So in these cases they are going to send your stuff, your details, to the Department of Justice and Security and all these places, and maybe they are going to run a background check on you. So it's always useful to take your curriculum vitae with you in case you are going to the consulate. So many times if you are a person applying for a B1 visa or even a J1 visa, they may ask you for your CV, and essentially what they do is that they peruse your CV to see if you are working in some fields which constitute dual use technologies, and they may not want you to necessarily come to the US to a conference because they have certain information which they do not want to share with you. And unfortunately, in case you get a 221G, it's very hard to figure out how long it will take you to get the visa. So this is something which happens when you apply for a conference, is that you may get the visa before the conference date, and it may also happen that you do not get the visa, you get the visa much later. But in that case also it's not totally wasted, because even if you get the visa later, you may not have been able to attend the conference you wanted to go to, but you can go to some conference later on. So in most cases, if your B1, B2 is good and everything works out well, you may be issued a longer term visa, maybe a 5-year or typically a 10-year visa. So in my case, I was able to get 10-year B1, B2 visas, and this certainly helped me come to various conferences in the US and learn a lot and also contribute a lot to different professional societies. Now, some of the things to keep in mind is not to get too despondent if you get the 221G, because this is a regular process. If you are in any field which is slightly sensitive, like material science or even engineering, physics, and so on, you may get a 221G, but this is just a routine process, and after a period of maybe 3 to 4 weeks or a typical period of maybe 2 to 3 months, you will hear back from them, and they will send your passport to your home with the visa and so on. Very rare cases the 221G results in a rejection, so in that case also it shouldn't matter too much. In the future you can plan your conferences in some other country. Typically European countries may be more lenient as far as giving the visa for various conferences are concerned. So maybe if I get time, I will make a video on the Schengen visa also. Now, some tips are there. Whenever you are filling the DS-160 form, be as truthful as possible, or do not hide anything. So if you have relatives in the US, maybe you have brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins in the US, there is a place where you need to mention these, and you can mention all the details. So do not hide anything here. There is no harm in having relatives in the US. Similarly, whatever employment background you have, wherever you have done your degrees, you need to list all these things out. And sometimes you may also need to provide the name of 3 references. So this is something again which comes in the 221G, is that sometime they will issue you a big checklist and you will be asked to send a plethora of documents. So in that case, it may be your CV, it may be some references in the United States and more things like that. So always be prepared for this. Of course, you don't have to give the documents right there. You can go back and send them the documents via email. So that's typically the form that you have to scan all these documents or attach the PDF file and send it to them. Now, one tip I would tell you is that be careful of posting random content on social media, especially if it is related to some kind of weird political views and so on. So essentially, remember that you are being monitored all the time, and people want to know that you are a good and proper person, and therefore it's always good to be a good and proper person. But in some moment of weakness, you may have put some stupid content here and there. That's not a good idea, because these things can come back later to haunt you. So that's something to keep in mind, that whenever you are on social media, try to put a good face forward, try to not get into subjects which are divisive nature and deleterious nature. So that was my take on the B1 B2 visa. Like I mentioned, the B1 visa can help you come to various top conferences in the United States. The B2 visa can help you visit your relatives, can help you in tourism and so on. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.